Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Wrestling Fluency, where we speak wrestling and we hope you do too. I'm your host, the King of Pennsylvania Strong Style, the Moneymaker Heartbreaker, and the self proclaimed champion of time, $1 Million Matt. And once again, I am joined by my co host and tag team partner,
The Alabama Slammer, the Randy.
Woohoo! We are back again. Look at us being consistent.
I know, I got the pep.
Yep, we are the king and queens of consistency right here. Especially since we now have more time to spare and more time to give you some more of your wrestling fluency that y'all have been longing and dying for. But we don't worry, we got y'all. It's all good. So, Brandie, how you doing today?
It's been a struggle bus day, but feeling pretty good now. Excited to record this episode. I've been really excited about this episode.
Oh yeah, same here, definitely. And I know we've been talking about it for a while, especially when we're talking about our episodes that we're looking forward to recording, and this one's a special one. So I hope y'all are excited for it as much as we are.
Yeah, this one it's where I had an idea and you had an idea, and they were similar but different, and we just squished them together to make like a super episode.
Oh yeah, definitely. So consider this as a wrestling fluency first, the first ever super episode. or right. should I put more emphasis into it, Brandie? Super episode.
Super.
Yeah, we gotta put a little more emphasis and more excitement into it.
What was the name of the guy that did Edge's Superstar thing like that? Superstar.
Oh God.
The rated R Superstar.
Oh yeah. I think it was Tony Chimmel.
I think you're right.
I'm pretty sure it was Tony Chimmel, because he was the SmackDown announcer for quite some time.
I never understood why he did it, but it's so iconic that I can't not hear it anytime someone says Edge's name now.
Yeah, and fun fact, I think me and my buddies actually bumped into Tony Chimmel at I think it was at a Walmart at some point. It was at a local Walmart. He was there.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we talked to him for like a bit, or my friends talked to him for a bit, but it was pretty quick. He was wanting to go there and shop and get what he needed to get. So we didn't want to bother him too much, but yeah, that was as far as I know, that was a Tony Chimmel memory in person I've experienced.
Oh my gosh, that's like, I went to see Lita after she retired because I never got to see her wrestle, but I got to see her band play when they went on their first tour, and I remember sitting in the bar and seeing her come in, and I was just like, okay, play it cool, don't freak out,
Yeah. Try not to fangirl out.
Yeah, because I think I was like 19 or 20 at the time, and she had been my hero since like the 90s. Yeah. So she like raised me. So I was like, oh, I totally get it. Makes me like feel very connected to that picture of AJ Lee like crying, meeting her at a fan sign. I was like, I understand completely.
Oh yeah, totally. And I was gonna say, definitely one of my one of the superstars that I'd be looking forward to meeting, that more than likely I would probably be starstruck, and hopefully I get to meet this superstar in my lifetime, and that would definitely be Bret the Hitman Hart.
Yeah.
Because the 90s was really when I got into wrestling. I know I was a fan since the 80s, back when I was a little penny Matt, but in the 90s, as a kid in the 90s, Bret Hart was my guy.
I loved Bret too because he wore pink.
Yep.
if you wore pink and had brown hair, I was like, you're the best. I don't know why.
Yep.
But so Little Bitty Moog also is like, oh, I love it. He's got the pink outfit on.
Yeah. And what was cool was his sunglasses, and I remember seeing in a WWF magazine his sunglasses. I wanted to get them since at the time I don't think we could afford to go to like actual WWF events, or we would not really hear about WWF events, especially when they came to the Philadelphia Spectrum. But the closest thing, I was like, man, that's the closest thing I'm going to get to probably getting Bret Hart putting the sunglasses on me. Is probably getting the sunglasses from the magazine, and I don't think my parents ever got them.
I remember my first wrestling thing. Like, of course, like my mom bought like Sting T-shirts and stuff because like local little shops would have them. But I remember my first WWE shirt came. My grandma like ordered it. It's like when the internet was barely a thing, and you would like write a check and send it to WWE, and they would send you a check. It took like 6 weeks.
Oh wow.
Yeah, gosh,
Yeah.
My grandma, what a great lady.
Oh yeah, she definitely totally is. Shout out to Grandma Slammer.
Slammer. May she rest in peace.
Yep, totally. Yep, she's an angel watching over us.
So, Matt, should we keep them in suspense any longer as to what this episode's about? I mean, I know they saw it when they clicked on the title, but...
Oh, of course, absolutely. Let's dive into it. So, for the longest time, we thought about this, and we've been wanting to do a history/evolution of wrestling, which basically goes into the Carney days, to pop culture, to also the current state of wrestling. And since my co-host has been really adamant about the Carney days and the beginning of wrestling, I'm going to hand it over to Brandie over here. So, Brandie, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Matt. So, a tidbit about me that hasn't been talked about on this show is that I love history. Very interested in like how things began, how it went from like culture to culture and stuff like that. So the history of wrestling, I didn't really know much about it. I just, started watching as a fan in the like 90s when I was a kid, and didn't think much about past the 80s. Like, so you know some of the names from those times. You're like, oh yeah, like Buddy Rogers and Lou Thez and Killer Kowalski and people. Like, you intellectually know them, but you don't really know about them and the significance that they had. So this is just a very brief rundown. This is something I would really love to like research and do a paper on, or an extended episode on. It's just something like that. But I went with a very kind of just summarization. So, did you know that wrestling is considered the first competitive sport?
Yep, I think I heard a little something about that. I think it started in the 19th and 20th centuries, and even some of the other pastimes. Believe it or not, from what I looked up, and for those that are sticklers for promos, y'all can thank the ancient Egyptians, because they were actually writing hieroglyphics as threats to their opponents, as what they were going to do to them. So that was like one of the very first promos to threaten and put fear into their opponents.
Yeah, and that was before the 19th century. There's like murals with hieroglyphics, and they say things like, I'm gonna pin you, or I will make you weep in your heart and cringe with fear. And so you have wrestling happening like all over the world, far back. And let's see, Japan had its own version, of course, with sumo. India had its, I mean, we actually, even back in the 1800s and stuff, got people from India here in the US that were amazing. A notable person that was a grappler back then was actually Plato, and he did the Greco-Roman wrestling that often ended in death.
Yep, that's right. They fought to the death, and I was just like, oh, that's intense.
I found it very interesting to find out that two of our two significant founding fathers, in my opinion, were wrestlers, and that was George Washington and Abe Lincoln. Abe Lincoln had 300 plus matches.
That's right.
Yep, he was a boss.
Yeah. Abe Lincoln was a monster. I was like, okay, Honest Abe, I see you, bro.
Okay, Abe. Could you imagine? If you beat him or something, then he becomes president, you're like, what?
Yep.
Okay, so wrestling, there's a big debate whether it be wrestling or running, but it's the oldest battle sport known to man. So you get rolling to the Civil War. And so a lot of this may be more U.S. centric, obviously, because Matt and I are both from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to remember there's like wrestling history is one of those things that it's so big because it's happening all over the world. Like, obviously, we know today that Japan has a huge wrestling history. The UK has its own huge wrestling history, and then it was happening here in the States as immigrants were coming over and stuff. But so the Civil War, a lot of the guys in the Civil War were actually wrestlers too. So when the war was over and they needed to make money, they started fighting. They started going and wrestling. And this is before wrestling was scripted. So they're actually wrestling. These are like 2-3 hour contests. Very athletic, very competitive, and that's how the guys are making the money. So you've got all that. Well, then you start to get the carnival aspect into it, where they're figuring out, okay, people aren't paying as much attention. They just don't have the attention span for this. And let's see. It's the 20th century. The 20th century, it was normal and for like areas to have a world champion. So in 1901, a guy named George Hackenschmidt, he was Russian but born in Estonia. He had a move like the bear hug and the inside trip. And in 1904, he sold out the London Opera House.
Yep, I remember that too. And from what I understand, I think around that time was the first time they had women attending wrestling or sporting events.
There's this interesting thing with women in wrestling. It's like this is the first time they've really started coming to sporting events. And with women in wrestling, you'll see the ebb and flow of women being interested and not. So anyway, after the Civil War and like all of that, this is when Frank Gotch, sorry, I got tongue-tied. Frank Gotch, this is when he came on the scene. And he was also a good hooker as well. So he decides he's going to go up against the Mr. Russian Man and for the title. And he uses a move, the step over toe hold. And so he goes to hit this step over toe hold, and the Mr. Russian Man leans back and is like, I surrender my title to you, sir. And so they're going to have a rematch. And this rematch is huge because everybody's like, holy shit. The match went on between Frank Gotch and I don't want to keep calling him Mr. Russian Man, but I forget his name.
George Hackenschmidt.
George Hackenschmidt, yeah. So him and Gotch, they have their rematch. And it's going to be in front of 33,000 people. It's a huge event. That's big for modern wrestling. So that was huge for back then. Yeah. And what's interesting enough is that Gotch actually was a vaudeville guy too. So, anywho, leading up to the match, Gotch decides to hire this guy named Ad
Santel.
Yeah. For $5,000 to rough up George, to like mess his knee up. And so he did, and people were really upset about this. And this is when it gets into like people being like, oh, wrestling is on the take, and forget wrestling. And there's actually even an instance where one of the journalists drunkenly sends out the wire with the match stuff, like the winners of the match before the card even happens. It's like the day before.
Yeah, it's basically a predetermined result.
Yeah. So Gotch won, and he retires undefeated, but wrestling at that point is just freaking dead. So simultaneously while this is happening, and this is wrestling that's like the more traditional wrestling kind of deal, to where it's not pre-scripted. During this time, P.T. Barnum of Barnum and Bailey Circus, they're like, okay, wrestling. This is interesting because at this time, there's not really radio. Radio doesn't come around till the 20s. TV is a long way off. Circuses coming around and state fairs and stuff like that, that's very strange. That doesn't happen all the time. So when they come around, people go to those. And so he starts employing wrestlers. And so as they travel around, he's got people on payroll, and they've got colorful outfits, and he gives them a backstory, and they would have exhibitions, and they would have like it open to public, like, oh, some local guy come in, and every once in a while, most of the time, like these people, obviously they did like wrestling, but they're doing professional wrestling. So let's make that distinction now. Wrestling, when I respond to wrestling, that is the unscripted. When I refer to pro wrestling, that is the scripted wrestling. That's not to differentiate between the quality of the two, just, one is predetermined and one is not. So during that time, they're traveling around and they're having pro wrestling, scripted battles. But they would have exhibitions where they would like let some rando from the town, and every once in a while you go to these towns and you get a big old boy who had been a soldier, had some wrestling backgrounds, and that's what they would have, a hooker. And a hooker was a trained professional who he knew all these holds, and some of them may or may not be legal, so he was really able to take it to the guys. Like hookers were the most feared men in wrestling.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a totem pole at wrestling that was established during this time, and it's the hookers, which were like, you are afraid of them. Just under that you had shooters, which were they were still professional, but they weren't as dangerous as the hookers. And then you had the journeymen, which is what we now call the jobbers, pretty much. It's the people who like know pro wrestling, but they probably weren't wrestlers beforehand. And their job is to take the fall. They're the job guy. They're the job squad.
Yeah, exactly. They basically pulled a guy off the street, said, hey, you want to make $20? All right, go wrestle this match and you're going to get the shit beat out of you.
Yeah. Exactly. So at that point, all of the people who were considered, and I'm using air quotations here, people, carnies, they really, a lot of them who were doing the pro wrestling stuff, they decide that they're not going to do the circus stuff anymore. They're going to set up offices. They're going to make a federation. They're going to put a title on someone, and they're going to have their own federation. And this is how the territories started beginning and popping up. So, overseas at this time is a gentleman named Ed the Strangler Lewis. And he was a hooker, like a super talented hooker, and he used the choke.
Yep.
What is that called?
It is.
What you wrap your arm around their neck? That one?
I was gonna say it's actually a signature move, the sleeper hold.
The sleeper hold. Thank you. As many times as I have said sleeper hold in my life, I could not think of it for the life of me. Anyway, so that move was originally not allowed in the U.S., and he was just kicking ass all over Europe with it. So he comes over here, and like the newly set up carnies turned bookers are like, hell no, he can mess up my champion. I don't want him. So he winds up in the Northeast, and he gets together with Billy Sandow, who is his manager, and Toots Mott, who is a promoter but was also a wrestler as well. And together they become something called the Gold Dust Trio. And those three are really given a lot of credit in the U.S. for taking wrestling and like making it what it is. It was Toots who was like, all right, look, people don't want to come and stay here all friggin' night. Because you got to think, one match is taking 2 hours at that point. It's like, forget about it. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to bring it down. We're going to sensationalize it. He actually came up with a lot of the moves that you still see people do today. And he's the one who decided to start booking it like vaudeville. And so you'd have like cards booked and like people with, matches. And he helped come up with a lot of the different rules and just all of that, right? And then the three of them, the Gold Dust Trio as a unit, they are the ones who came up with time limits, several of the holds, flashy moves, and they also came up with the idea of like a stable of wrestlers, so a set pack of wrestlers traveling around each territory, and they're the ones who are like doing the shows pretty much. Their peak in their Roaring 20s, the Gold Dust Trio has like 500 wrestlers on their payroll, and with all the rules they've started and like packaging it up vaudeville style and it being scripted instead, professional wrestling. This is like the birth of really pro wrestling going on, and it became the blueprint for modern wrestling. And so, then you start getting people like handsome Jim Landos, who was doing like the Beauty and the Beast matches, which was like a gimmick kind of match, and you're starting to see people come out and have gimmicks. The 30s was not a kind time for wrestling. Of course, the Depression is going on in the U.S. We have World War going on. It's a tough time.
Oh yeah, it's brutal.
And this is the official time, actually, in the 30s, is when the New York papers are putting out stuff. Jack Pfeffer, I wrote his name down. He is the one who outs that wrestling is scripted and not quote unquote real. He got upset that he got screwed in some deal. Well, anywho, time goes on, and Lou Thesz takes up the mantle of the unbeatable champion from Ed Lewis. And he's 21. He's the youngest world champion at the time. So in the 30s, while things are low, economy's low, appreciation for wrestling is low, wrestlers go back into, not necessarily, they're always going to be wrestling at carnivals, but they start branding themselves as an art form, and they start going to like club places and pool halls and stuff like that and doing their shows there, which is interesting because you think about like how many of our current favorite wrestlers are like, yeah, we were like having our first matches the Bella Twins talk about it in their book. Their first matches was like in a canning factory.
Yeah.
So, like, this is the rise of that happening.
Yep, that was like the rise of the bingo halls, or I think Chris Jericho mentioned in A Lion's Tale that he actually wrestled in the backyard for a kid's birthday party for, as he likes to call it, a hot dog and a handshake.
Heck yeah. Look, I'm from the South, y'all. Okay, we have got some backyard wrestling. I remember waddling down. Wrestling. Yes, some Jim Cornette-like wrestling going on. I remember walking 2 blocks down with my dad when I'm a kid and watching someone do a wrestling show in their yard just 2 blocks down. So,
how about that?
Yeah. My dad and my uncle, they did like wrestling when they were young guys. They were little masked wrestlers and stuff.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Didn't you tell me about that before?
I think I've mentioned it before, that they were little independent wrestlers for
Okay.
My family, cool. We just get into some stuff. We all have just done some weird stuff from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
But, so, turn of the century's happening. We're getting TV and stuff like that. And the carnies, they need things to call each other so you can send, and Jim Cornette has talked about this, a lot of the lingo that you get in wrestling now is from those carny days when they would be telegraphing each other the finishes for matches. And so, heel, for instance. Heel, and a lot of people associate heel with wrestling, but heel is actually a much older word, and it has always meant like a contemptible person. And then, of course, face, as we know it, is short for baby face, which is the good guy that goes over. Mm-hmm. And, just one thing I found out is that in Lucha Libre, I think it's Rudos, Rudos.
Yep, it's Rudos, and Technicos is babyface.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I watched it. We must have watched the same documentary. But, I thought that was pretty
definitely.
Cool. So, TV is a thing. Not everyone in America has a TV. Everybody's like, oh, let's all hang out. Let's all get together and watch the fights and watch the wrestling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is when you start getting people like Gorgeous George, who was like a psychologist or a psychiatrist or something like that.
Yeah, he was a psychologist.
But he was the first one to do like the bleach blonde hair and this really over-the-top gimmick. Later on, you get Buddy Rogers as the original Nature Boy. And Buddy Rogers is really how we started getting accustomed to what we think of when we think of like the champion, the nice suits and the affluency and looking sharp all the time.
Yeah,
and actually,
and just looking like $1 million.
Yeah, and Buddy Rogers is actually still studied today by wrestlers for his promos, hyping himself up and talking about how he's the greatest, and just the way he was is literally they're like a textbook for example for them to go and learn about these things. So, yeah, with the rise of television, you've got just all these larger than life people coming out, and it's just on the way up from there. You start getting into people we start knowing more about, like Killer Kowalski, Moolah, the fabulous Moolah, just all these people we start to know, and then it just keeps coming to modern wrestling.
Yep.
So that is my brief synopsis of wrestling from its humble beginnings up to television.
All right. And now we are going to transition into when wrestling became a big part of pop culture. So
before we do, can I say just one more thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I've heard Jim Cornette talk about this. Anyone who was ethnic was usually a popular superstar. And actually, it wasn't, now I can't remember who it was, but it wasn't until like more modern than you think that an all-American kind of champion was put as the champion. Usually it was like someone who was an immigrant, because wrestling in the Northeast, and there was a big immigrant population there. Thought that was neat. Killer Kowalski getting his killer nickname is interesting. It's because he accidentally knocked someone's ear off in the wrestling ring.
Yeah,
and he said the next night he was in the ring, and up to that point I think he'd been working babyface, and the next night he's in the ring and someone throws a pig's ear at him. And they're like, "You're a killer!" And he became Killer Kowalski that way. And is it Killer Kowalski who like Triple H really looked up to?
Yep, and in fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Killer Kowalski also trained Triple H.
Oh yeah. So I also wanted to take a moment to mention Mildred Burke, who was she in the 20s. She retired undefeated. She would actually wrestle men, and not men like, hey, they're also wrestlers and in on the gag. I mean, she wrestled the exhibition men, and she retired undefeated as an amazing women's wrestler. And Moolah is who won her title, beating 13 other women for that belt, and she is still that champion. And during this time, Moolah like valeted, and one of her ballet names was Slave Girl Moolah, and she would get involved in matches and stuff. So she was one of like the blueprints of how ballets were in the beginning. So you have Moolah, and then you get into like Sherry, just that long tradition of female valets getting involved. I thought that was cool. And then Moolah got the name The Fabulous Moolah because her manager said, "Why do you want to get into wrestling?" And she said, "For the money, for the moolah." And he goes, "Well, you beat 13 girls in one night to win that title. So that makes you pretty fabulous. And then you want the moolah, so you are the fabulous moolah."
Yep.
And that is the end of my random trivia. We can move into pop culture.
All right. So on to the pop culture segment of this conversation. So let's take it back. Let's take it way back to 1985, where
I can't go back that far. I wasn't born yet.
Yeah. I was going to say I was about 1 year old, and I'm sure you were imaging your parents' eye around that time. Yep. Right before you were a little slammer.
Before I was a wee slam.
Yep. But anyway, back to 1985, and this was on an MTV broadcast, The War to Settle the Score, and this was involving Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, and a pop singer who definitely is getting her flowers on this episode, Cyndi Lauper. You know, the singer that sings "Girls Just Want to Have Fun." But anyway, in 1985, MTV had a broadcast called The War to Settle the Score, which involved Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan, and they were accompanied by Cyndi Lauper, Captain Lou Albano, and Mr. T, and it's set up for the first ever WrestleMania. So the match was Roddy Piper and who he managed at the time, Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, and they were facing against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. And this transitioned into wrestling becoming mainstream and Hulk Hogan becoming a figurehead in wrestling culture. And that match ended up, the gist of it is it's set up for the first ever WrestleMania. And Hulk Hogan and Mr. T ended up winning that match. And it also later on set up for WrestleMania 2, which was the boxing match between Roddy Piper and Mr. T, where Roddy Piper purposely got disqualified for slamming Mr. T, which is a no-no in a boxing match, but it was what it was. And it also led to some more moments in pop culture where a lot of wrestlers were involved, especially with commercials and television. I know Andre the Giant appeared in Princess Bride, which was a very cult classic movie where Andre the Giant played a good prominent role. And he also played as Sasquatch in a 2-part episode of The $6 Million Man in 1976. So he had some other acting jobs. And he also appeared in other television shows, The Greatest American Hero, BJ and the Bear, The Fall Guy, and in the 1990s, Zorro. So that's an Andre the Giant. And also, my favorite, Macho Man Randy Savage, was the spokesperson for Slim Jim. Fun fact, that's one of my favorite snacks. So if you ever see me and ever want to get me a snack, Slim Jim's is my jam. Snap into a Slim Jim. And Macho Man also appeared in the Spider-Man movie as Bonesaw.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't? Mm-mm. Oh yeah, that was one of the best parts of the movie. Bonesaw is ready. Didn't mean to give you a spoiler. I was going to say you ought to check it out.
Oh, it's okay.
Yep. And this also led to different superstars coming into their own into Hollywood and also into the mainstream forefront. This is including The Rock making an appearance in movies such as Walking Tall, The Rundown. His first ever movie, The Mummy Returns, where he plays as the iconic Scorpion King. Haku Machente. And then also having his own Scorpion King movie. And then they tried to make other ones, which we won't talk about. We'll keep it on the focus at hand here. Also, this inspired Hulk Hogan. Well, actually, Hulk Hogan was in many movies, come to think about it. I actually just watched this movie a little bit earlier. This was basically my take on that movie, No Holds Barred, which is a movie you either want to remember or you want to forget it. And it also starred the legendary Zeus. If y'all don't know, that is Tommy Tiny Lister, who played as Debo on Friday, rest in peace, and was also involved in a WrestleMania match, if I'm not mistaken.
I want to apologize if you can hear dogs barking. For some reason, my neighbor's dogs have barked nonstop today.
Yeah, I think I heard that. I was just like, oh my God, I guess they won't stop barking.
It just won't stop. My neighbors are the rudest people on planet Earth. They are just god awful.
Ugh, yeah, nothing like rude neighbors. But anyway, back to it. So also this led to other wrestlers taking movie roles. If y'all don't remember, with Hulk Hogan making appearances on Baywatch, I think also Ric Flair has made an appearance. Macho Man has made an appearance. I think Shawn Michaels played as a goon in the Baywatch TV show. So I think there are a lot of wrestlers involved in Baywatch. And in one of the Royal Rumbles, I believe one of the stipulations was the winner was looking to date Pamela Anderson, who was hot at the time in the 1990s. So there's a lot of involvement with pop culture and wrestling being involved with each other and intertwining. So
that's true.
Yeah. So a lot of things with wrestling and pop culture being involved
Do you
are.
remember when Hogan was in those nanny movies?
Oh
As a nanny?
yeah. Oh my God, I remember that. That, believe it or not, I actually found that entertaining.
I'm pretty sure I liked it when I was a kid. I remember like just like one scene
Yep. Yeah.
where he's at the limo or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. But everybody still remembers when he was doing the ballerina stuff.
WWE wrestlers used to be in a lot more television shows and stuff. Like that's how Lita broke her neck, is that she was guest starring on
Uh,
Dark Angel.
yeah, that's right, with Jessica Alba.
Yeah. And then of course The Miz has been in 18 million Marines by now.
Oh yeah, of course. We can't forget to mention the Miz.
Yeah, John Cena, the original Marine.
Yep.
I loved the Marine movie with John Cena in it, but
Oh yeah.
I can't say I've watched it as an adult.
Yep. I think I rewatched it and I was like, you know what? This actually was pretty cool.
I would love to. Did you ever watch Trish Stratus in that movie Bounty Hunters or whatever she was in?
Yes, I think I watched it. I think
I
that was kind of like an all-star cast. Didn't it have like RVD and Batista on him? Or am I thinking of
I
something else?
I don't remember. I just remember Trish being in that movie and being like, I'm gonna watch that one day, and I never.
Yeah.
But also, oh Matt, I think I'm getting you off track. I was gonna say we've recently had a really good movie come out that was kind of a bio of Paige's life.
Yep,
Wrestling with
that's
My
right.
Family.
But yep, fighting with my family, which I'm actually
Fighting My
staring
Family.
at in my yep, fighting with my family, which I'm actually staring at right now, and it happens to be in my collection.
I liked that. I thought that was a really.
Yep. And let's not also forget the TV show that's currently on Peacock that just recently came out with a season 2, and that is Young Rock.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't watched that, but I heard that it's
Oh,
like
you
goofy
gotta see it.
funny.
Oh, you gotta check it out. It's funny. It's funny and it's entertaining, and I enjoy it. In my opinion, Brandy, it's worth the watch. So if you get some time, check it out.
Ciao, ciao.
Yep. But I was gonna say, speaking of John Cena, since you mentioned him in the Marine, he is also a spokesperson for Honda. Yeah,
For
that boy.
Honda?
I'm dead serious. He's in a Honda commercial where he's talking. Yep, he's actually a spokesperson for Honda.
I had no idea.
Yep, I was gonna say, if you see one of the Honda commercials when you're watching Monday Night Raw or SmackDown on Fox or AEW or anything like that, um, check it out.
Wait, so he's the voice, right?
Yeah, he's the voice. You just can't see him.
You know, I think I do remember now. Voice.
Yep, and I was gonna say John Cena has actually appeared in a few other commercials. And oh, shame on me. He was actually in the second Suicide Squad, and that actually led to him being in my favorite TV show on HBO Max, which I can't wait. Hopefully, to come out with a season 2. Peacemaker. Yeah, it's so dope. I thought it was going to be stupid, but it was actually awesome. And even the signature theme song and the intro is dope because it's by this 80s band called Wigwam, and the song's called Do You Really Want to Taste It? And they do this funny dance routine that is just ridiculous looking, where the whole cast is doing breaks out in a whole dance routine. It's hilarious. I believe it or not, I actually imitated that dance on my Instagram, and y'all ought to check it out if whenever you get a minute. In
I think
fact,
I remember seeing you do that.
yep, and that's exactly where that came from. And if y'all don't know, if y'all want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is MTB, my initials underscore legacy 1984.
Yeah, check him out. Malata.
Yep, that's right. Yep, you can feel free to slide in my DMs.
Say hello.
Yep. But also back to the conversation. So let's not forget to mention Sasha Banks appearing in The Mandalorian.
That was a big one and recent.
Yeah, it was pretty dope. And I was going to say, she actually did a good job.
I haven't seen it, but I'm glad that she did.
Yep. It's pretty awesome. Yep. I actually went through that season a while back. I had a little bit of time on me. And yeah, it's definitely worth it. Yep.
Huh. No, I just never got to have the opportunity to see it.
Yep. Oh, I looked up her character and I just found it. Her character's name is Casca Reeves. And she's credited by her real name.
The Mercedes
Varnado.
Varnado.
Yep, her shoot name. Shoot name was shooting. Pew, pew.
Interesting.
Yep. Oh, let's not forget Batista appearing in Guardians of the Galaxy as Drax the Destroyer.
Oh, yeah. That was a really big role for him.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a great movie.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, Batista really entertained the shit out of me, and I was cracking up laughing. I honestly thought his character being like very naive and short-sighted, it was just hilarious. He's like, you just exposed your secret about you. Do me. Batista.
People talk about, Batista's in Hollywood now, and I'm like, has he made a movie besides that, though?
I think he's made a few here and there, but none that are really notable that I remember or have even bothered checking out.
Yeah, I
That's just me.
Put him on the same level as like The Rock or John Cena as a breakout Hollywood star or anything like that.
No. But let me ask you this, Brandie. Do you think Roman Reigns would have what it takes to be in Hollywood?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that without hesitation. I mean, here's the thing about Roman. He has charisma. He has appeal. He looks like a movie star. Matter of fact, he looks like him and Jason Momoa could be brothers.
Yeah, I think that he's just a very visually attractive man. Jason Momoa has really done a lot for like the Samoan community and getting them out there as being like action heroes, which I mean I don't know why they weren't already. There's so many athletic Samoan people out there. I'm like, they're literally built to be superheroes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's like, you've never seen a haka? That's the most intimidating thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. And in fact, Brandie, it's funny you mentioned haka. There's a video that I see on YouTube, and this wedding takes place in New Zealand where there was a haka chant during the bride and groom's vows. The wedding party was doing a haka, and then next thing you know, you see the groom doing the haka with the party, and then you see the bride, who is actually Maori, doing the haka with them. Oh. And they're doing this chant. It's freaking awesome. I was just like, man, you better not screw up in that family. They'll freaking cut off your tongue and eat it in front of you.
I hope not.
Yep, I was going to say, you better not ever mess up in that family. But anyway, we got a little off topic. Another topic I wanted to touch on is the Mike Tyson and Stone Cold confrontation, which was big to set up WrestleMania 14. Which, it wasn't that big of a match, but just the fact that Mike Tyson was involved was the money seller for it. And just that whole confrontation and face-off between Stone Cold and Mike Tyson, where Mike Tyson pushed Stone Cold, and then Mike Tyson's security is trying to fight off or fend off Stone Cold, and then you hear Vince McMahon saying, you ruined it, to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, wow. I was like, okay, I'm interested in seeing this. Although I couldn't afford pay-per-view at the time, but yeah, it was a good money seller. But I ended up seeing the results on one of the WWF magazines. So I was just like, yeah, Stone Cold won. Yeah. And, I can't forget this one. RKO out of nowhere. The meme that took the internet by storm.
It sure did. People who I don't think they know a thing about wrestling knows about RKO out of nowhere.
Yep. Yeah, it was in fan made movie trailers. I think it was either in an Avengers or Batman versus Superman fan made trailer, and I was just like, oh my god, how much more ridiculous can this meme get?
Don't tempt them.
Yep, really.
You'll find out real fast how much.
Yeah, it just gets more and more ridiculous every time you see it. But we couldn't help it. It was taking the world by storm.
That's true. And, like, it's cute that Randy Orton and his kids get in on it sometimes, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
My friend will send me videos every once in a while, like, did you see Randy and his kids doing this? And I'm like, yeah. They're cute.
Yep, and it's funny, too. Yep, wasn't there a moment where one of his kids did an RKO on him, or was it some random kid that did, like, an RKO on him?
I think there's been both.
Okay, I thought so.
I think his daughter does it to him on the bed, like she runs.
Yep, like father, like daughter.
Yeah.
Yep, but another point that I definitely would like to touch on, and it was a moment that me and Brandie thought was going to go horribly wrong and become a dumpster fire, and that was Logan Paul's appearance on WrestleMania 38. Yep, and me and Brandie still say this: if he's not doing anything, whether it be appearances or anything with his YouTube channel or his podcast, give that man a contract.
Yeah, I agree on that. He just had such an aptitude for it. I did not anticipate that. Granted, he was working with really great people, so yeah, we'll give them their roses on that. But still, he was very athletic and good, and the stuff he pulled off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm improving on this. I didn't write this down in my notes. Let's not forget Bad Bunny.
Yeah, Bad Bunny did have a good little run.
Yep, and I'll tell you what, he was one of the top selling T-shirts. The silhouette of him flying on a T-shirt.
It's always interesting when these stars come over, because you expect them all to just really stink up the place, but they don't. They some of them really do well. I just imagine that they're all going to be Snooki.
Yeah, or Lawrence Taylor versus one of my favorite guys from back in the day, which I was a little disappointed that this was a dumpster fire of a match, and that was between Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow.
That is sad, because Bam Bam Bigelow, you could usually get a good match out of him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And he was one of the big guys that should not be able to move around like a cruiserweight or do a half moonsault. Like, Bam Bam was very athletic for his size and his stature.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But I think for the most part that concludes my pop culture references. If anybody else has anything else that they would like to add on, or anything that they could think of, even if it's something obscure, leave it in the comments. I greatly appreciate it. More than likely, I missed a whole bunch of moments, but this one was definitely something where we went from Carney days to transitioning into pop culture.
Yeah, in our super episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep, our super episode. I was going to say, it's a shame we don't have kind of like a sound effect for that.
Super.
Yeah, we'll definitely work on that, folks. That's definitely a podcast goal. You can bet on that. All right, Brandie. So I guess we're going to move on to the current state of wrestling, the wrestling of the modern day.
Yeah. Well, I guess we already touched on some of the modern day pop culture references.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I just thought of this too, Brandie. If I'm not mistaken, isn't Bianca Belair, Sheamus, and Drew McIntyre in a DoorDash commercial?
I have no idea. I honestly don't see a lot of commercials because I
Yep.
do streaming.
Right.
So I don't see that many.
Yep.
But I'm sure there are. I know that when you go into the grocery store, their faces are all over Nestle water right now.
Oh yeah, totally.
Well, I guess for me, with the state of wrestling now, is having done this, this like just the small dive that I did into the history. I thought it was really interesting how they were called the Gold Dust Trio, and then we had Gold Dust. I was like,
Yep.
oh, that's a nice. I found like a lot of little nice nods to it, like Sandow's name being used and stuff like that. I was like, wow, interesting stuff. Really found that enjoyable. That like this was, I was already interested in it. It surprised me how interested I was after getting into it, and I was like, man, I wish I had more time to do a deeper dive into stuff. But one thing that I think is interesting is that there's a lot of the rules, like this is when the rules were first being made.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling has gotten away from that. And I'm like, yeah, if we went back to some of the stuff they were talking about back then, it would probably help us a little bit. Like, because we either have matches that are too short or way too long, too many spots, unbelievable spots. And like back then, it was like, look, you got to make it believable. Here's some flashy moves that'll impress them, but they were functional moves that would really hurt. Like a Boston Crab really hurts. I watched somebody in like a mixed martial arts fight tap somebody out with a half Boston Crab.
Yep.
That shit really hurts.
Yep. And matter of fact, Brandie, if you come to think about it, after you do the tap, you know how you transition into the actual arm lock? That shit probably hurts.
Yeah. I had a friend put a figure 4 on me one time, and I was like, get the fuck off me. I am dying. This hurts. How do people take this?
Yep, exactly. And even if, and this is for the people that will sit there and say wrestling is fake, let me tell you this. If I hit a pile driver on you and you don't protect yourself, I could break your neck and kill you.
A lot of wrestling moves hurt.
Yeah. So think before you call it fake.
Yeah. Well, and then just have some respect. Yep. And it was just very interesting to see it from the perspective of like, these are wrestlers and this is pro wrestling, and like it becoming an art form and stuff like that. It was really interesting to see like that kind of beginning journey.
Yep, exactly. And then how it transitioned into entertainment.
As far as the state of current wrestling goes, I think that with Western audiences, they're a little superhero movie obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to see that kind of stuff. And I wish that would go back into the movie theaters and stay out of my wrestling rings.
Yep, exactly. And don't get me wrong, I like when wrestlers would do an occasional superhero cosplay every now and then, but I don't want to see it all the time.
Every single like millennial aged wrestler, it seems like they're like,
yes.
Hey, I'm wearing a Sailor Moon outfit. Hey, I'm wearing like some anime.
Hey, I'm wearing something referencing the Iron Man, or I'm referencing something to Black Panther, and it's like, come on, dude.
I know, and like the girls even do it. Like we've seen Alexa Bliss do Iron Man. We've seen Sasha Banks do Iron Man. We've seen Wonder Woman so many times, but so many. I'm like, that's enough. That's enough.
But
I'm like, stop copying heroes of the past. Become a hero of the present.
Yep, exactly. Do something original. And I sometimes scoff at this, especially when some wrestlers would do like tributes to some of their favorite wrestlers, which in a way I kind of excuse that because it's involved with wrestling, but it's just like, come up with your own shit, dude.
Yeah, I don't mind it when like it's a special occasion and they wear like there's been times where CM Punk has worn the Bret Hart shorts and stuff like that. Obviously, Yeah. I mean, obviously, both Britt and Adam were wearing Owen Hart, just Hart family
Yeah.
costumes the last one. Which,
Yep.
like, when they came out wearing those, who didn't see them winning, you know?
Yep. And oh, let's not forget Ruby Riott did enough is enough, and it's time for a change. Caution. A lot of people forget about that.
So, yeah, I'm tired of cosplay wrestling, and I feel like that makes me sound like such an old man. But
it makes us sound like Jim Cornette, but it's true.
Well, because it's been done to death.
Mm-hmm.
And there are I follow a lot. I watch on Twitter. I'll watch these people design these awesome ring costumes with like different wrestlers in mind. I'm like, man, y'all should really get on that and get that design.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mind it every once in a while, but it's just like it's been so constantly shoved down our throats that I'm like, okay, I get it. Y'all are quirky. Haha, pop culture references. Haha, okay. Stop.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like, okay, enough trying to cosplay Scorpion for Mortal Kombat. We get it. We've seen it the first time. We don't need to see it again.
Freaking Katana. So many. Oh my God.
Although I will say Jade Cargill's rendition of Jade was bomb. I will say that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I dug that one.
Jade's also been a wrestler like a year, so I give her a little space on that.
Oh yeah, totally. But
yeah. Trish Stratus is real bad about doing the Wonder Woman thing every time she's.
Stop it,
Trish.
It's just like that's enough.
I'm like, you don't have to be Wonder Woman. You're Trish fucking Stratus.
Yep, exactly.
So that's one thing I feel like a lot of wrestlers borrow heavy from Marvel and DC and like anime from the 90s and stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah, exactly.
That's enough.
Yeah.
That's why I liked Bray Wyatt, is that even though he might be like taking from some things, and it's still he took things and made them his own, and it was a horror.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly what I was going to say, Brandie. He made it his own. And you don't see that enough in wrestling.
No, you don't. He wasn't like cosplaying. He looked at cult leaders and was like, okay, so this is what cult leaders do. And he made the Bray Wyatt character.
Right.
That's freaking cool. And then you just don't see that a lot. And people shit on like Malachi Black and stuff, but I think that he has made a really cool character.
Yep. And on top of that, the thing is, Brandie, it's organically him. Like he's a goth dude.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like he's not playing a gimmick or anything. It's not like you'll see him out in freaking preppy clothes and walking around with a freaking Starbucks cup. No.
It's like Danhausen.
Yes, Danhausen. Oh man, freaking Danhausen.
My friend Corey, which I don't think he ever listens to these shows, but if he happens to listen to this one, shout out to him. I got him obsessed with Danhausen too. And so I was like, I put him in the Fanhausen group. Welcome to the Fanhausen community.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people will sit there and say they don't get it, but hey, you either do or you don't. If you don't, that's whatever. Ain't nobody talking to y'all. You either a fan of Danhausen or you ain't.
Yeah. Oh, it's look. I know a lot of people are like, whoa, comedy wrestling. There's always room for a comedy act on the show. The problem is when you have 37,000 comedy acts and nobody is serious.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like we want to see wrestling. We don't want to see comedy. If we want to see comedy, we'll go to a comedy show or an improv show.
Could you imagine, like, if the show was just constantly intense? That would be very draining, especially for 4 hours.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You'd be exhausted. And that's why I scoffed at Double or Nothing being 5 hours, speaking of which I was actually surprised I wasn't freaking resting my eyes for like 20 minutes or so freaking on a snore fest. But luckily, the last few matches, the last couple hours were actually exciting, and I was actually interested in them.
I was streaming it on my laptop and playing a video game at the same time because I just keep doing stuff like this. I don't know why. But so So I was playing, and at first I was like just doing some random stuff while watching, and just little stuff. You know how it is. People who play games, you know how it is. Sometimes there's just like you're watching something, but you've got a game, and maybe it's just me. But anywho, the point is that it slowly went from me like paying more attention to the show to me paying more attention to the game, to the point that like I just didn't even care what I was seeing. I was like, I'm gonna go to bed, and I'll have to finish it tomorrow.
Right. Yep. And I was at a point where I even said to my friend Steve I was going to go home around like 10:30, but the rest of the show kept me interested. I was like, all right, I'm going to watch this. Especially after the triple threat tag team match came up. I was just like, all right, I'm going to watch this. Plus, I had my Keith Lee shirt on, too, so they already knew who I was there to see.
I was just sitting here by myself eating sushi. But, that's one thing that I really miss. I used to have this friend. We're not friends anymore, unfortunately.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, and we had a little wrestling podcast together for a time, and it was really fun because he was a big wrestling historian. And we used to watch every pay-per-view together. But unfortunately, he became one of those people that, like, when he gets a girlfriend, he just stops showing up for you as a friend. And I'm like, dude, come on. I don't know why. I'm like, my two best friends are a married couple. And I hang out with the husband separately from the wife sometimes, and the wife separately from the husband. And then we all hang out together.
Right.
So it's not like, oh, you got to be careful of that one. Like,
yeah.
I'm a single friend that couples are like, yeah, we both like.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I don't know. He got involved, and not with the woman that he's married to now, but he got involved with this other woman, and that's when it started happening. Like, I don't know if it was her or if it's just how he is in a relationship, but the woman he was dating before the woman he married now, he just like had to be at her beck and call, and she was very tedious, so nobody wanted her around. So anyway, I'm spilling tea and drama.
I was gonna say it bees like that sometimes, It
bees like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where people can't really separate or have the balance, but it all depends on what kind of partner you have. So it is what it is.
I say all that drama. I got into all that drama for no reason. No, I got into all that drama to say that I miss like having WrestleMania parties and having people come over and it being this big event. I watch a lot of them alone now, and it really sucks.
Yeah. I was gonna say I'm not to brag, but I'm fortunate enough to have a friend or friends that'll say, "Hey, you want to come over and watch wrestling?" Yeah, sure.
I cannot find no, I know there's other people in this town that like wrestling. I don't know if it's because I'm a girl. Maybe it's because I'm a girl and it's weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like maybe. I don't know how people in relationships and married folks do.
Yeah. Well, Brandie, I'll keep my door open for you. If you're ever in Pennsylvania, need a friend to watch wrestling with, $1 Million Matt got you.
$1 Million Matt.
Yeah.
Watching the wrestling.
Yeah.
I would love to live stream, like do a reaction thing. That would be really fun going forward, but that's far in the future. People don't get too excited.
Yeah. I was gonna say, don't put all your eggs into that basket yet. We're still in development with that.
Yeah, I would love to do like a watch party together or something like that with our peeps. That would be so fun.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially with live tapings too. Especially with Monday Night Raw or Dynamite or SmackDown.
Lord, I swear everything that could happen during this recording has happened. Dogs went crazy. A motorcycle tore through. My neighbor started working on his car, and now MedFlight just went over.
Oh goodness! I was gonna say, Alabama Slammer Brandie cannot escape the noise.
It's just noise over here.
Yep.
Goodness.
Yep. Well, I was gonna say my only background noise is NXT 2.0 and my ceiling fan, and the occasional airplane that goes over my house.
Well, all right, Matt. What else? Have we said everything we're going to say?
Yeah, I think we covered all that we're going to say for the History of Wrestling episode, so I think we ought to take it on home.
Well, all right, Matt. I'll let you take it home.
All right. Sounds good. But thank you once again for joining us for another super episode of Wrestling Fluency, of the history of wrestling going into pop culture, where we speak wrestling and we hope you do too. And once again, I am your host, $1 Million Matt. And once again, signing off with my tag team partner.
And I was interrupting Cal Moo, the Alabama Slammer.
All right. And we're out, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye.